to Deep Sleep Stories. If these stories have helped you through restless nights, please leave a review. Reviews are what help this podcast grow, reach more listeners, and stay alive. Without them, even something meaningful can slowly disappear. So if this show has brought you comfort, that small act truly helps keep it going. Now, settle in, and let's begin.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, and let this gentle evening carry you into a quiet tale about a hidden little café in Saint-Rémy, where an old accordion plays as softly as moonlight over stone. Settle in now. Let your body find the shape of rest. Let the room around you become calm and distant, as if it has softened at the edges. Feel the weight of the day begin to loosen. Your shoulders can lower. Your hands can unclench. Your thoughts, if they are still moving, do not need to be followed. They may drift by like pale clouds over a warm Provençal sky. Take a slow, easy breath in and let it go. Somewhere far away, the evening bells are ringing over the rooftops of Saint-Rémy. Their sound is gentle and golden, moving slowly through narrow lanes, across quiet courtyards, and into the open fields where lavender and rosemary hold the last warmth of the sun. The air smells faintly of baked bread, cool stone, wild thyme, and the soft sweetness of figs ripening in baskets beside old blue doors. Breathe in again, as if you could breathe that peaceful air, and breathe out, letting yourself become still. The story waits at the edge of a small square beneath plane trees whose leaves whisper softly in the dusk. There is a cafe there with cream-colored walls, green shutters, and a striped awning faded by many summers. From within comes the tender sound of an accordion, not lively, not loud, but slow and tender, as though the instrument is remembering a lullaby. And as you rest, there is nothing you need to do. The story will carry itself. Your attention may follow it for a while, or it may float away and return again, and either is perfectly fine. The streets of Saint-Rémy will remain peaceful. The music will continue. The evening will deepen at its own unhurried pace. And now, as your breathing becomes slower, the story gently begins. In the old quarter of Saint-Rémy, where the lanes curved like ribbons between honey-colored houses, there stood a cafe that did not appear on any map. Travelers sometimes passed the square without noticing it at all. They might see the fountain with its moss-darkened basin, or the narrow balcony where geraniums spilled over iron rails, or the quiet tabby cat asleep beneath a wooden bench. But the cafe itself seemed to wait for a certain kind of evening before letting itself be found. It was called Le Café de l'Accordion, though the painted sign above the door had faded so much that the words could only be read in the gentlest light. Its windows were small and rounded at the top, and in each window sat a little brass lamp, glowing amber when dusk settled into the streets. The door was painted soft green. A bell hung above it made not of silver but of blue glass, and when anyone entered, it did not ring sharply. It gave a quiet note, round and mellow, like a drop of water falling into a deep well. The café belonged to Monsieur Armand, an elderly man with kind eyes, a white mustache, and hands that moved slowly as though they had learned the art of peace from many quiet years. He wore linen shirts in summer, wool vests in winter, and always, a soft blue scarf, no matter the season. Some said the scarf had belonged to his wife, who had once sung in the café on rainy evenings. Others said it had been given to him by a musician who had traveled over the mountains with nothing but an accordion and a loaf of bread. Monsieur Armand never corrected any story. He simply smiled, polished a cup, and let the telling become part of the place. Every evening, just as the last sunlight slipped from the rooftops, Monsieur Armand would take his accordion from its velvet-lined case behind the counter. The instrument was old, made of dark wood with pearly buttons and bellows the color of red wine. It had scratches along the corners and a small pressed violet tucked beneath the glass near the treble keys. When he lifted it to his chest, the room seemed to draw a breath with him. Then he would play. The music was never quite the same. Sometimes it sounded like a path through olive groves, dry and silver beneath a quiet sky. Sometimes it sounded like rain beginning on roof tiles. Sometimes it carried the warmth of a kitchen at dusk, where soup simmered and bread cooled on a cloth. People came to hear it, though they did not always know that was why they had come. They arrived saying they wanted coffee, or a bowl of onion soup, or a slice of almond cake, but after a few minutes their voices softened, their shoulders eased, their eyes wandered toward the accordion, and they remembered how tired they were and how good it felt simply to sit. On a mild evening at the end of summer, when the cicadas had grown quiet and the moon was rising pale over the Alpilles, a traveler named Claire came into Saint-Rémy by the old road from the north. She had been walking for many days, through villages of warm stone and fields where sunflowers bowed their heavy heads. Her satchel was light, but her thoughts were full. She had left behind a noisy city, full of rushing wheels and bright windows and clocks that seemed always to be urging people onward. She had meant only to walk until she felt rested, but rest had been slow to find her. That evening, Saint-Rémy welcomed her without hurry. The streets were narrow and cool. The stones beneath her feet still held the memory of the sun. Shutters stood half open, and from within the houses came small sounds of supper, a spoon against a pot, the murmur of conversation, water poured into glasses. Somewhere nearby a dog sighed in its sleep. Claire paused at the fountain in the little square. Water slipped over the lip of the basin with a sound so steady and soft that she could almost feel her thoughts moving with it, circling, settling, growing clear. She placed her satchel on the bench beside the sleeping cat and let herself sit for a while. That was when she heard the accordion. The music came from across the square, from the small café with the green door. It was a low, tender melody, rising and falling like breath. There was no demand in it, no sparkle asking to be admired. It simply opened into the evening, warm and unhurried. Claire listened, and something inside her loosened, She had not realized how tightly she had been holding the silence within herself. The cat opened one green eye, stretched, and stepped down from the bench. It crossed the square with complete confidence, paused at the cafe door, and looked back at Claire as if expecting her to follow. So she did. The blue glass bell above the door gave its deep, gentle note as Claire entered. Inside the cafe was smaller than it had seemed from the street, and yet it held more space than it should have. Round tables stood under shaded lamps. The walls were lined with old photographs, dried bunches of lavender copper pots, and shelves of mismatched cups. A long wooden counter ran along the back, its surface polished smooth by years of elbows and saucers. Behind it, Monsieur Armand looked up and smiled. "Bonsoir," he said softly. Claire answered in the same quiet way, for the room seemed to ask that voices be gentle. The cat slipped around the counter and leapt onto a folded blanket near the window. Monsieur Armand nodded toward it. "That is Colette," he said. "She chooses who comes in." Claire smiled for the first time that day. Monsieur Armand did not ask where she had come from, nor where she was going. He simply placed a cup before her and poured dark coffee from a white pot. Then he set beside it a small plate with a square of honey cake, golden at the edges, and dusted lightly with sugar. "For travelers," he said. Claire thanked him and sat near the window. Outside, the square had deepened into blue. The fountain shone faintly. Above the rooftops, the moon had lifted higher, round and calm, and the leaves of the plane trees moved in slow shadows. Monsieur Armand returned to his chair by the counter and lifted the accordion again. He began to play a tune that seemed at first to be made of very little. A few notes, soft as footsteps, a pause, another phrase quieter than the first. But gradually the melody unfolded, and Claire felt it moving through the room like warm air. The coffee tasted of earth and gentle bitterness. The honey cake tasted of summer fields. She ate slowly, and with each bite, the journey behind her seemed less sharp. The city she had left became distant. The roads she had walked became ribbons, laid softly over hills. Even the tiredness in her legs seemed to dissolve into the chair beneath her. A few other guests sat in the cafe that evening. Near the hearth, though no fire was needed, an old woman in a violet shawl knitted without looking down, her needles moving in time with the music. At a corner table, a young man wrote in a notebook, though his pen rested more often than it moved. Beside the door, a baker with flour still on his sleeves leaned back with his eyes closed. No one spoke much. There was no need. After a time, the young man looked up from his notebook and said, "Monsieur Armand, play the song for the almond trees." The old woman smiled. "Yes, the almond trees. It is almost the right moon." Monsieur Armand's eyes brightened. He adjusted the strap of the accordion and began a new melody. This song was lighter. It trembled softly at the edges, like petals stirred by the first breeze of morning. Claire closed her eyes and saw, though she could not have said how, a hillside in early spring. Almond trees stood pale against a tender sky, their blossoms white and faintly pink. Bees moved drowsily from branch to branch. The earth smelled new, and somewhere far below the village was waking. The image was so clear that Claire opened her eyes, expecting to find the café changed, but the lamps still glowed amber. The cat still slept in the window. Monsieur Armand still played, his fingers moving with patient grace. When the song ended, the baker sighed. That one always makes me think my mother will come calling me in for breakfast, he murmured. The old woman knitted another row. Perhaps in some way she does. No one answered. The room held the thought kindly, like a cup held in both hands. Claire stayed longer than she had meant to. Outside footsteps passed now and then, softened by distance. A bicycle rolled over the stones. Somewhere, a shutter closed. The café grew quieter, and yet the quiet was full, not empty. It held music, lamplight, the scent of coffee, and the small comfort of strangers resting in the same peaceful room. At last, Monsieur Armand set the accordion down. He covered it with a silk cloth and began to clear the cups. Claire stood, a little reluctantly, and reached for the coins in her satchel. But Monsieur Armand shook his head. "Tomorrow," he said. Claire looked at him in surprise. "Tomorrow?" she asked. "If you are still here tomorrow, you may pay then. If you are not, the road will settle the account." This made no practical sense, but in the café, it sounded perfectly reasonable. Claire thanked him and stepped out into the square. The night air was cool against her face. She found a room at a small inn nearby, where the sheets smelled faintly of lavender and sun. As she lay in bed, the accordion's melody returned to her, quieter now, woven into the murmur of the fountain outside. For the first time in many weeks, she did not plan the next day before falling asleep. She simply listened within herself until sleep came, deep and kind. The following morning, Saint-Rémy woke slowly. Light slipped over the roofs, pale at first, then warm. The market opened near the church, filling the air with the scent of peaches, tomatoes, goat cheese, basil, and fresh bread. Claire wandered among the stalls with no particular purpose. She bought a small paper bag of apricots and ate them beside the fountain, watching swallows turn and dip above the square. The café was closed in the morning. Its green door remained shut, and the brass lamps in the windows were dark. Colette the cat sat on the sill, washing one paw with delicate importance. When Claire approached, the cat looked at her as if they had long been acquainted. The day passed gently. Claire walked beyond the village into olive groves where the leaves flashed silver in the breeze. She followed a path edged with rosemary and thyme, their fragrance rising whenever her skirt brushed the stems. In the distance, the alpilles lay blue and folded, like a sleeping animal under the sky. There were no decisions to make. There was only the path, the sound of insects in the grass, and the warm, patient light. By late afternoon, clouds gathered softly over the hills, not dark enough for a storm, only enough to soften the sun. Claire returned to the village just as the lamps were beginning to glow. She felt herself drawn again toward the little square. At first, the cafe was not there. She saw the fountain, the plane trees, the bench, the balcony with geraniums, but the wall beyond them seemed plain, with no green door. She stopped. A cool breeze passed through the square. The leaves whispered, the fountain murmured. Then, from somewhere very near, came a single note from an accordion. The green door appeared. Not suddenly, not with spectacle, but gently, the way a memory appears when one stops trying to recall it. The brass lamps bloomed in the windows. The faded sign became visible above the awning. Colette leapt down from the sill and walked to the door, where she waited. Claire laughed softly, not because anything was funny, but because wonder had risen in her chest and needed somewhere to go. Inside, the cafe was lit and warm. Monsieur Armand stood behind the counter, slicing pears into a bowl. The old woman in the violet shawl was there again, and so was the baker. The young man with the notebook had returned, along with a few others Claire had not seen before. A woman with silver hair and bright earrings, a shepherd smelling faintly of wool and wind, and a child who had fallen asleep with her cheek against her grandmother's sleeve. "Ah," said Monsieur Armand, "the road did not take you yet?" "No," Claire said, "not yet." "Then tonight, soup." He set before her a bowl of vegetable soup, golden and fragrant with saffron, leeks, and herbs. There was bread beside it with a crust that cracked softly beneath her fingers. Claire ate while rain began to fall outside. It was a delicate rain, barely more than a shimmer, tapping gently on the awning and darkening the stones of the square. When Monsieur Armand played that evening, the music was for rain. It began with tiny notes like drops on leaves, then widened into something flowing and silver. Claire watched the window glass gather beads of water. The lamps doubled themselves in the reflections. The square outside blurred and softened until it seemed to belong to a dream. As the melody deepened, the cafe seemed to breathe again, not with lungs, but with memory. The shelves, the cups, the photographs, the wooden floor, the old tables all held small echoes. Claire felt that if she listened closely, she might hear every conversation that had ever been spoken there, all softened by time into a kind of hush. The woman with silver hair leaned toward Claire. "People think the accordion remembers songs," she whispered, "but that is not quite it." Claire listened. "It remembers rest," the woman said. "That is rarer." The words settled gently in Claire's mind. Rest? Not sleep exactly, though sleep was part of it. Not stopping because there was nothing more to do. Not giving up. Rest was something deeper. A returning. A permission. A soft place where the heart could put down what it had carried and remember that the world was not only made of tasks and distances, but also of lamplight, soup, rain, and music played by patient hands. That night, after the cafe closed, Monsieur Armand did not cover the accordion right away. Instead, he carried it to the doorway and stood beneath the awning, looking out at the rain. "The almond trees are listening," said the old woman. "They always listen," Monsieur Armand replied. Then he played a final tune barely louder than the rain itself. The notes drifted into the square across the wet stones, over the fountain under the plane trees. The water in the basin trembled. The geraniums on the balcony bowed their bright heads. Even the rain seemed to fall more slowly. Claire stood with the others, wrapped in the tender hush of the music. She did not know whether she was awake in an ordinary way or whether some gentler layer of the world had opened around them. It did not matter. The night was kind. The square was safe. The song asked nothing of her. On the next day, Claire woke with a feeling she had not known in a long while, the feeling of having arrived. She did not feel eager to leave, nor afraid to stay. She simply opened the shutters and let the morning enter. The sky was washed clean. Drops of rain shone along the balcony rails. From the bakery came the smell of warm butter and rising dough. She spent the morning helping the innkeeper hang sheets in the courtyard. In the afternoon, she sat beneath an olive tree and wrote a letter she did not send. She wrote about the roads, the hills, the rain, and the cafe that could not always be found. She wrote that she was beginning to feel quiet inside, not empty but spacious. When the ink dried, she folded the letter and placed it in her satchel. That evening she went again to the square. This time the cafe door was already open. Monsieur Armand was not behind the counter. He was standing on a small wooden stool, trying to hang a string of paper lanterns from one beam to another. The baker held the stool steady. The young man with the notebook held the other end of the lantern string and looked very serious about it. Colette supervised from the counter. "Perfect timing," said Monsieur Armand when he saw Claire. "Can you tie a knot?" Claire could, and so she helped. The lanterns were shaped like little moons made from thin cream paper. When lit, they filled the cafe with a soft glow that made every face appear peaceful and familiar. More people arrived as the evening deepened. Someone brought a basket of figs. Someone else brought a jar of lavender honey. The old woman brought a folded cloth embroidered with blue flowers, which she spread across the largest table. There was no festival, not exactly. No announcement had been made. Yet the cafe seemed prepared for celebration in its own quiet way. Monsieur Armand made a pot of thick chocolate and another of herbal tea. He placed bowls of olives on the tables, plates of cheese, pears, and little biscuits scented with orange blossom. The guests spoke in low voices. The child from the night before drew circles on the fogged window with one finger. The shepherd told a story about a lamb that had followed a butterfly all afternoon and fallen asleep in a patch of mint. Then the accordion came out. The first song was warm and slow. The second was softer. The third seemed to have no beginning at all. It simply rose from the room as though it had been waiting inside the wooden floorboards. Claire sat near the counter watching Monsieur Armand's hands. His fingers knew exactly where to go. They pressed released, wandered, returned. The bellows opened and closed like a quiet heart. After a while, the old woman stood. She moved into the small open space between the tables and began to dance. It was not a grand dance. She turned slowly, her violet shawl drifting around her shoulders. The woman with silver hair joined her, then the baker, then the young man, who looked embarrassed until the child laughed and took his hand. Claire watched them move beneath the paper moons. Their steps were simple, circling and swaying, barely lifting from the floor. It seemed less like dancing and more like remembering how to be carried by music. Monsieur Armand played with his eyes half closed. At last, the old woman beckoned to Claire. Claire hesitated only a moment, then she stood and stepped into the circle. There was no need to know the dance. The circle moved slowly enough for anyone to belong. A step to the side, a turn, a pause, a soft laugh. The cafe lights glowed around them. Outside, the square rested under the stars. Claire felt her satchel leaning against the chair, her boots on the floor, her breath in her chest. She felt the music pass through her, not taking anything away, only making room. For a little while, all the travelers of the world seemed to be there, though only a few stood in the room. Those who had walked too far, those who had waited too long, those who had forgotten how to pause, those who had carried sorrow folded neatly inside them like a letter. The accordion played for all of them. It did not ask their names. It did not ask them to explain. It simply made a place where they could rest. Later, when the lanterns had burned low and the plates were nearly empty, Monsieur Armand sat beside Claire near the window. Colette slept between them, her tail tucked over her nose. "You found us easily tonight," he said. "Yes," Claire replied. "I think I am learning how." Monsieur Armand smiled. "It is not hard, but it cannot be hurried." Claire looked around the cafe, at the cups, the shelves, the glowing lamps, the people lingering quietly over the last of the tea. "Does everyone find it?" she asked. "Everyone who needs it may," he said, "though not always when they expect." "And do they stay?" "Some stay for an evening, some for a season. Some only hear a note from the street, and that is enough." Claire listened to the fountain outside. Its steady sound seemed woven now with the memory of the accordion. "What about you?" she asked. "Have you always been here?" Monsieur Armand looked down at his hands. "No. I arrived once with a satchel and tired feet like many others. The cafe belonged to an old woman then. She played the accordion. When she grew ready to leave, she taught me the songs." "Where did she go?" He looked toward the window, where the moonlight rested on the square. "Perhaps farther down the road, perhaps into the music. In Saint-Rémy, both are possible." Claire did not ask more. Some answers she was beginning to understand were best left soft at the edges. The days that followed were gentle. Claire remained in Saint-Rémy, though she never made a decision to do so. Each morning she woke with the village light on her wall. Each day she walked, helped, listened, or simply sat. She learned the sound of the church bells, the names of the market vendors, the best hour to sit near the fountain when the plane trees made wide pools of shade. She learned that Colette preferred saucers of cream, but accepted compliments with greater dignity. She learned that the young man with the notebook was writing poems about clouds, though he claimed they were about architecture. She learned that the old woman had knitted scarves for half the village and remembered every baby born there for more years than anyone could count. And each evening when the café appeared, Claire returned. Sometimes Monsieur Armand played songs that carried the scent of the sea, though the sea was far away. Sometimes he played a tune that made the lamps flicker like fireflies. Sometimes the music was so soft that everyone leaned closer without realizing it. On those nights, the café seemed to float gently outside ordinary time. The tea never cooled too quickly. The candles never burned down. The moon lingered in the window as if listening. One evening the Mistral arrived beyond the hills, but when it reached the square, it softened. It moved through the plane trees with a long sigh, sweeping dust from the stones and stirring the lavender hanging above the café counter. Monsieur Armand played a song for the wind. The melody wandered, lifted, settled, then lifted again, like a bird finding its way through invisible currents. Another evening, the stars seemed unusually close. The guests carried their chairs outside and Monsieur Armand played from the doorway. The music rose into the blue darkness. People in nearby houses opened their shutters and listened. A baby stopped crying. A dog rested its chin on its paws. The fountain continued its quiet speech. Above them all, the sky widened, deep and gentle, full of slow burning light. As the season turned, Claire felt something within her changing. It was not dramatic. No bright revelation came. No old sorrow vanished all at once. Instead, each peaceful day placed a small stone of calm inside her, and each evening of music set it gently in place. She began to sleep without waking before dawn. She began to taste her food more fully. She began to notice tiny things. The way pear skin caught the light. The way old wood smelled after rain. The way silence could be friendly. She also began to understand that rest was not a place where the road ended. It was something she could carry, a rhythm, a small cafe within the heart, a green door that might appear when the world grew too loud, if only she remembered to pause and listen. On a clear night, near the end of her stay, though she had not yet said the word leaving aloud, Claire entered the café and found it empty except for Monsieur Armand. Even Colette was not in sight. The lamps burned low. The tables were set with clean cups. The accordion waited on its chair. "Ah," said Monsieur Armand, "tonight you hear your song." Claire looked at him uncertain. "My song?" "Every traveler has one," he said. He lifted the accordion. For a moment, there was only the faint sound of the bellows opening. Then the music began. At first, Claire heard footsteps on a road. Then the city she had left, but softened now. Its noise turned into distant rain. She heard loneliness, but not as something sharp. It was a wide field under evening light. She heard the fountain, the market, the olive trees, the rain on the awning, the laughter in the circle beneath the paper moons. She heard her own breathing, slow and steady. And beneath it all, she heard a small melody that seemed to have been waiting inside her all along. Tears came to her eyes, but they were quiet tears. They did not hurt. They felt like the last drops of rain falling from leaves after a storm has passed. Monsieur Armand played until the song had said everything it needed to say. Then he let the final note fade into the room. Claire sat very still. Outside the square was silver with moonlight. Colette appeared at the door, slipped inside, and brushed against Claire's ankle. "I think," Claire said softly, "the road may take me soon." Monsieur Armand nodded, not sadly, but with kindness. "Then it will take you more gently than before." The next morning, Claire packed her satchel. It was no heavier than when she had arrived, but it seemed to carry different things now. A folded letter, the scent of lavender, a paper packet of biscuits from the baker, and the quiet knowledge of a hidden café in Saint-Rémy. Before leaving, she went to the square. In daylight, the café was not there. Only the warm wall, the fountain, the bench, the geraniums. But on the bench sat Colette, curled in a patch of sun. Claire bent to stroke the cat's head. Colette allowed it for a moment, then closed her eyes. From somewhere nearby, so faint it might have been the wind, came a single accordion note. Claire smiled. Then she began walking. The road out of Saint-Rémy passed between olive trees and low stone walls. The morning air was cool. The hills ahead were blue. With each step, Claire felt not that she was leaving something behind, but that something peaceful was walking with her. The music had become quiet inside her, but it was there. Behind her, the village rested in sunlight. The fountain murmured in the square. The plane trees stirred. And when evening came, the lamps in a certain little cafe would glow again for whoever needed them. Now the story grows softer. The square settles under the moon. The green door closes with barely a sound. Inside, the cups are washed and placed back on their shelves. The chairs are tucked beneath the tables. The last crumbs of honey cake are brushed gently from the cloth. Colette curls in the window, breathing slow and even. Monsieur Armand covers the accordion with silk. The music does not disappear. It rests. It rests in the wood of the tables, in the amber lamps, in the cool stones outside, in the fountain's endless murmur. It rests in the quiet lanes of Saint-Rémy, where shutters close and dreams begin. It rests in the olive groves beneath the silver leaves. It rests in the hills, under the wide, patient sky. And somewhere along a moonlit road, Claire walks more slowly now. Her steps are easy, her thoughts are light. She carries within her a small warm room, a cup of tea, a soft chair by the window, and a melody that rises and falls like breathing. Everything is peaceful. Everything can wait. The night deepens. The stars keep watch. The fountain whispers. The accordion sleeps. And you may sleep too, gently and safely, as if the little cafe has opened a place for you beside the window, where the lamplight is warm and the world asks nothing more. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.